quite hard to believe now, but HP used to be quite an innovative company. We're going to look at this system because I think this is probably around the time that HP lost its mojo. So thanks for joining back for another video. What we're looking at today is a fairly boring tower from HP, but it has some interesting features, and it's kind of the end of the line of innovation, I think, from HP. It's hard to say where HP went wrong, although the merger with Compaq was probably a pivotal moment in that sequence of events. But, you know, HP used to be a very innovative company. I mean, look at the HP 95LX, for example. I mean, I've got one of those. It is an amazing device, and the 100 and 200 that followed it were even better. And they are truly, you know, groundbreaking stuff. Products that you wouldn't necessarily expect a big, safe organisation to want to develop, but they were pretty good. Come the turn of the century, HP was trying to do something kind of a little bit different as well, and around the turn of the millennium was when the convergence happened between digital TV, multimedia on computers, and large enough hard disk sizes that we got kind of devices like this, and I'll talk to you about this in a bit more detail in a second. So what exactly have we got here? We have an HP Media Center PC, and this particular one is the M7580. It's the UK specific version. There's different regional variations of this, but this is the UK specific one. And it was exactly what it said. It is a Media Center PC. Now, Media Center basically derived from the Windows XP Media Center Edition version of Windows XP, which came out in 2002. And during its long reign, Windows XP spawned a couple of different versions, but Windows Media Center Edition was one of those. And it was a kind of weird iteration of Windows XP Home Edition that had features for using in the living room. Things like a 10-foot interface and some dedicated software for playing back and recording digital TV, for example. Manufacturers took that on board and they produced a whole range of Media Center styled PCs, some in tower format like this, some in horizontal desktops, some in pizza box style, and some that didn't look like computers at all. And you'd hide those somewhere in your living room and connect them to your TV. They were kind of considered appliances, much to the point where they actually, you know, came with remotes. This is an actual HP Media Center Edition remote that should work with this computer. I haven't tried it yet, but this is the kind of thing that would come with this, and then you'd plug this into your TV in your lounge, or you'd use this as a kind of hub for media in your bedroom or office. Now, why am I calling this innovative? Because loads of people were doing this, and this is a boring desktop tower. Well, there's a couple of features about this which do make it innovative. I think the remote, you know, is one of them. I mean, it wasn't particularly specific to HP. Microsoft, in fact, made their own Windows remote, but there are several other features about this which make it quite unique. Let's have a look around it first of all, though. So the front is quite busy. There's quite a lot going on. We've got the HP Media Center labeled down here. To that, you've got the Windows XP sticker. This one's also got the Windows Vista compatible sticker label. So this must be a later one. And in fact, it's got the Intel Viv on the other side. So the Intel Viv was kind of like a promotion. Intel did try and be the center of the all things media streaming in the house. And this, if you had a certain set of hardware and software, you could have this label stuck on the front. But that didn't come out until, I think, 2007. So this must be quite a late Media Center computer. Those are the kind of the only official stickers that are on it. We've got an advertising sticker here, which tells us that we can burn custom labels onto your CDs and DVDs with this thing called LightScribe. So that was a technology where you could flip the CD over or the DVD over and have the laser burn an image on the surface of the top surface of the optical media, just to give it a kind of label instead of having to print stuff on there. It had the advantage of not unbalancing your media, because if you put a printed sticker on it, it can become unbalanced, particularly at high spin rates. So this was a kind of media that lasted a very short time. It didn't really catch on. The contrast wasn't very good on the labels when they were made, but that is an interesting thing. So that's a kind of advertising thing up here. There was some kind of sticker here that's been removed. This looks like maybe a sales sticker, nothing to do with HP. We've got the two bays for optical drives, and we've got the eject buttons here. Let's see if we can flip this down manually. We can. So there is indeed the original LightScribe DVD writer in there. And then this says it's a DVD-ROM, so hopefully there is a DVD-ROM in there. There is. Excellent. So we don't know if they're working yet. We've got 3 more bays here, well, what appears to be 3 more bays, which aren't. I'll come back to those in a moment. Up the top we've got a card reader. That was kind of so 2000s, early 2000s. Card readers were everywhere, and multimedia computers definitely needed those. So you could take your photos off your camera, plug it straight into your media center computer and watch them on the TV in high resolution. We've got a choice of media. We've got compact flash, obviously, and we've got SD card. We've also got the older Smart Media and XD and Sony's memory stick. On-off button down the bottom and a hard disk indicator light just down here. There's a cover here which doesn't seem to do anything, but it's got wireless LAN written on it. So again, you've got that convergence happening with wireless in the home, so you don't have to have cables running everywhere when this is tucked up next to your TV. On the front here, you've got this connectivity center label, and behind this door, which folds away very neatly, you can have a whole host of connectivity. You've got 2 USBs, FireWire 400, audio in and out with phono, got composite video, and you've got S-video. So you can connect a lot of things to this, and these are all for input on the top here. So you can connect your camcorder, whether that's your DV cam or your S-video cam, and put that straight into the computer and record from your video recorder straight onto your digital media. So this is very welcome. Some nice front ports all hidden behind this very nice little door, which I don't want to break. And now I can't get closed. There we go. What's behind this door is a little bit more interesting, and this is part of the innovation I was talking about. So this personal media drive bay. So open it up, and there's a little flap here, and behind that flap there's a hard drive bay, but it's not for a standard rectangular 3.5-inch drive. It's for a drive in a caddy, and they made a special series of caddies that would slot in there and connect up at the back, and they basically connected via USB. So you could have a transportable full-size hard disk that you could plug in here, hide away very nicely, and then if you needed to take hours and hours of digital video to another location, you could open this up, pop this out, take it with you to work or whatever. So that was quite an innovative feature. I don't have a drive to go in there. If you do have one, by the way, I've been searching one for about 6 months. If you've got a drive that fits in here that you want to get rid of, I'd be very happy to take it off your hands, so leave a comment down below. If you actually use one of these on a regular basis, also leave a comment down below, because I'm not really sure how well this took off. Because you've got 2.5-inch portable hard drives of 300 gig capacity that would plug in via standard USB 2 without power, they kind of became redundant very quickly. And I think HP did move to a smaller form factor version of this in its later iteration, but this is for the full size 3.5-inch physical mechanical hard drive. So the reason it didn't take off, as I said, is probably because USB rotating disks and USB flash drives kind of became a little bit more ubiquitous. There's nothing behind this, it's purely a HP logo. So that's the front dealt with. Let's have a look at the sides. Nothing very exciting on the sides. We've got some ventilation, we've got the HP logo. On this one we've got some marks which seem to have etched into the material a little bit. It's for quite a nice silver finish. It would kind of slot into your home hi-fi type look. Up here's the model number and serial number. So the other side's a little bit different. Still got the HP logo in the middle. Much reduced ventilation. It's very specific to here, just down the side of the optical drives. And then down here we've got the sticker for the Windows XP. We've also got a sticker for Microsoft Works 8. So you can see this is aimed at the kind of home market. This is not a business machine. None of the features on this computer really suited business. On the top, this one's a bit scratched here and there, so something's been put on and off. But this is another part of the innovation that I think qualifies as innovation anyway. Here, you've got a little flap, and you can retract that, and underneath there's a slightly kind of half circular shape. And this is for something quite interesting. It's for an HP camera dock. Now, I tried to find a list of docks that was suitable and compatible with this machine, and I could not find a definitive list. I bought this on the off chance. I don't think it fits because I think it's too small, but we'll give it a go in a minute and see exactly how this works. So basically, you take your dock, in this case, this particular one here. This is an R series dock. I think this is about a year or two later than the rest of the computer. But basically, if you had the right one, it would fit into this perfectly like that. You kind of clip in place. The cables would run down the side and down this little tunnel, and then they pop out on the back. I'll show you that in a second. And then what you would do, you would have your camera, and then, so this would be closed but with the dock in place. You then open it up, place your camera on the dock, and everything would then sync directly to your hard disk on the inside of the computer. So I think that is quite innovative. I've never seen another mass-produced computer that has anything similar to that. So I need to find the right dock. This is obviously the wrong one, but I quite like that feature. Well done, HP. So around the back here is the chute where the USB and power cables would come out, and then you plug your USB into one of the available USB ports here on the back. Quite a neat way of doing it, I think. Disadvantage of this obviously is you have to have your dock on top of the computer, so you can't put anything else on top of the computer, and your dock needs to be where the computer is. If you want your dock in another position, like in front of the television, obviously that's not going to be useful to you. So around the back we have a fairly standard AT layout. We've got a AT power supply, extraction fan, motherboard, and I/O. On board here we do have the digital audio in and out, which is again part of this whole media thing. 4 USBs, is that enough? I suppose there's a couple on the front, but you're gonna, once you've got a keyboard and mouse plugged in and your camera plugged in, you've only got 1 spare USB, so that's a little bit on the stingy side, I think. Has got built-in Ethernet, has got a firewire on the back, which is welcome, and then you've got surround sound, and that's obviously important to have the surround sound. This is going to be in your lounge, playing through your TV. You do need a 5.1. Video card wise, we've got one here that's got VGA, DVI and HDMI outputs. That makes sense again from a media point of view. This particular one has got a wireless network card here without an aerial, and underneath that there is a TV tuner. So I don't know anything about that, whether it's analog and digital, whether it's just digital. We'll open it up and have a look in a moment. So we do have a legacy port here. We've got the parallel printer. There's no serial on here, which is interesting, but we do have PS2 for the mouse and keyboard. Now I'm hoping this has got a infrared remote built into it somewhere, because as I said, if you go back to this, you've only got 1 spare USB. If you then have to plug your USB infrared remote receiver into that, then you're all out of USB ports. There's a couple of cutouts here. I'm not sure what they're for, maybe for a different type of digital media or analog media capture. So I know nothing about the specs for this machine. I know that HP made these both in Intel and AMD forms. The e-waste recycling sticker on the dock says that it has no hard drive, so it's not going to have the OS installed. We'll come to that in a bit. But otherwise, I know nothing about this machine. I know whether it's Intel, AMD, whether it's Pentium 4 or something else. It probably is a Pentium 4. Let's open it up and have a look. Opening up looks easy, and looks like there's 2 thumb screws here, which are very stiff. Let's give them a little bit of persuasion. The thumb screws themselves are a little bit corroded, but the rest of the system looks pretty good, and there isn't very much dust in the fan here, which is interesting. Case screws are captive, which is nice. So first thing that's obvious is there is some rust here, and I presume that's from a fluid spill. It's not on the power supply, it looks like, and I can't see any on the base of the case, so maybe it just got very damp just in that one area. Right, it's quite busy in here. There's lots of cables, which is not a surprise because we've got a lot of media things going on. We've got some, looks like some quick release catches here. Got a big CPU cooler. Looks like an ATX case. We've got a SATA cable here with nothing plugged into it, so I'm guessing that's for the non-existent hard drive. So if this is SATA and it's a Pentium 4, it's probably socket 775 would be my guess. But I don't know. I just need to take it out and have a look. So let's work out how to do that. So here we've got that big cage for the removable hard drive that goes in the front with a dedicated cable which goes to one of the USB ports on the motherboard by the looks of it, and then a separate power supply cable. So this whole coloured plastic makes me think this is kind of quick release for some of these. Certainly the optical drives appear to be quick release with those 2 catches there. Is this whole thing quick release? Doesn't look like it. There are some screws here, including a cutout in the plastic shroud for a screw, so maybe that needs to come out. That's if we're going to take it apart, but judging by the complexity of the cables and all these Molex splitters. But yeah, there's certainly a splitter here, and then there's a shed loads of USB cables down here by the looks of it, USB and FireWire I'm guessing. They all look like they're plugging into the motherboard on the USB headers. Let's get you a better view. So it is very crowded in here. I don't think you're going to be able to see much at all. You just have to trust me that this bundle of wires plugs into, as I say, what looks like USB headers on the motherboard. What I can see is that the motherboard is an Asus, and it's a P5 LP-LE. So P5, almost certainly going to be a Pentium based motherboard. Can't see the chipset because it's covered up with a heatsink. There are 4 RAM slots, 2 of which have got RAM in. You can't see that from that angle. And presumably there's a hard drive cage on the underside of here, which is where the hard drive would have been originally. But it is quite cramped in here. So yeah, that's just a bit messy, isn't it? Just looking at the caps down here on the motherboard, they all look fine. There's not much dust in here, and in fact when I looked at the fan on the back, there wasn't any dust in either the case exhaust fan or the power supply fan, and there's no dust really to speak of on here either, so I don't think this had a lot of power on hours. So we're getting this video card out and the TV card as well, see if they tell us anything. So having looked up this motherboard, it is an OEM special edition from Asus, specifically for HP. It's got a single PCI Express 16 slot, which is where the video card is. It's got 3 PCIs, and it's got a dedicated kind of PCI expansion slot apparently on the bottom, which may be for something specifically OEM. It's got 4 memory slots. They're DDR2. It is an LGA 775, and it's using the Intel 945p chipset. It's got 4 SATA ports down here in the corner. You can't see them at the moment, but obviously at least one of those is attached to what was a hard drive. It looks like there's a second SATA cable. Yes, there is. So the expectation is maybe 2 hard drives would be attached to this, but the optical drive's working off IDE. So there's a single IDE controller on the board. There's actually a floppy drive controller on the board as well. So let's see if we can get this video card out without it being too much of a hassle. It is a hassle because it's not even a Phillips screw. They put in a semi-secure thread on there. It's a Torx thread. That's obviously to dissuade you from tinkering with this. This is obviously designed to be an appliance, not kind of a user serviceable. Well, let's user service it. So it's a low profile card. It's not going to be very powerful at all, I don't think. I'm guessing it's going to be FX 5200. It's a PNY card. It's a low profile card. Dilly little fan on there. It's a shame it wasn't passive, because then it would have been completely silent for your media center computer. Okay, it's actually a GeForce G2100, so quite a lot later than I was expecting. It's got 512 megs of GDR2. So yeah, so I think this particular one must be quite a late media center edition computer compared to the kind of the very first ones that came out. So this TV tuner card is almost certainly going to be a digital one, given the age we've just worked out on the computer. And it is attached to one of these grey cables, so it's an Asus branded one. It comes with a free dust bunny. Looks like it's got a Philips chipset. Tiger S is the label. I know nothing about Asus TV tuners, but hopefully we can look that up. So the fact it's got a cable connected to it as well means it must do something other than transfer data through the PCI bus, again, which is interesting. Let's put that back in. While we're at it, we might as well have a look at the wireless card. My assumption was it's going to be a 802.11g, but it may not be if this is newer. It is, yeah. So it's a 54 megabit per second WG311 version 3. So nothing very special. Let's remove this broken antenna. Now I'm guessing that's OEM, because if you remember there was a sign on the front saying that it had wireless network capabilities. So I'm just going to put everything back in, and then we can turn it on and see what happens. Well, we know part of what's going to happen, nothing, because we don't have a hard disk in there. Right, what I'm going to do then is, because there's no hard drive, I'm going to turn it on to see if we can get into the BIOS and see what that tells us. I presume it's going to have quite a nice HP specific boot logo. Then we'll put a hard drive in, and then we'll see if we can get it booting into Windows Media Center Edition. So for this, we're going to use this Dell 19-inch 1280 by 1024 LCD. Obviously, you'd normally plug this into a widescreen HD TV. I haven't got one of those that will fit on my desk, so this is the next best thing. It isn't widescreen, unfortunately, but that shouldn't make too much difference for what we're going to do. So let's plug it in and see what happens. Okay, we have a boot. Okay, copyright 2006 HP. Pentium D, 3.2 gigahertz. So dual core. And then we have a boot disk failure. So that's totally understandable. That's exactly what we're expecting. So we've got a Pentium 4D. So that means it's got 2 cores and running 3.2 gigahertz. So that's not a cool chip. Probably not what I would have chosen to build a media center computer out of. Keeping that cool isn't going to be quiet. So we'll see how noisy it gets in a bit. But let's get some keyboard attached and we'll try and get into that BIOS. Okay, let's turn it on and see what happens. We now have keyboard and a mouse attached. So it's definitely the GeForce G210. F1 to enter setup. You can hear a optical drive being burnt in the background. I'll tell you what that's about in a minute. But here we go. So CMOS battery is dead because we have a 2006 date on there. No hard drives, correct, but it has recognized both optical drives, so that's good. And we've got 2 gigs of RAM. So we've got a gig stick in each of the memory bank 1 and 3, so it should be having dual channel memory. If that's supported by the chipset, I can't remember, I think it is. And the BIOS version is 3.15 from 2006. So this machine does look like it was quite late. And in fact, thinking about the graphics card, the 210 wasn't released, I think, until 2009. So this is really late. If that's an original card, this is a very late spec system. CPUs wise, we have a Pentium D running at 3.2 gigahertz on the 800 megahertz front side bus. And then we have 2 megabytes times 2 of level 2 cache. So that's a pretty large level 2 cache for Pentium 4 times. Excellent. SATA modes in IDE, which is what we need because we're trying to install Windows XP. Windows XP won't recognize an SATA disk out of the box unless it's one of the later service packs. So let's leave that on IDE. Onboard SATA configuration, enhanced mode. Combined mode, enhanced mode, not quite sure what that means. Everything else seems reasonable. We've got the LAN, FireWire and audio on. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is install a hard drive and then see if we can boot in Windows Media Center Edition. So these originally would have come with a mechanical hard drive on the SATA port, but for the sake of speed, we're going to use a SSD. Originally, the capacity would have been 320 gigs or maybe 500 gigs. Just going to go for a 60 gig hard drive just to get the install going. And then we can boot up an optical media and get this working. So we already have the data cables in place. Oh look, we've got release catches on the power as well, which is unusual. So hopefully that'll be recognised. I don't have a HP OEM version of Media Center, but there is one on archive.org, so that's exactly what this is. So we're going to boot off this and see if we can get it working. So it's going to go to F1 again just to make sure we've recognised the hard drive. Now we've got SATA version 1 on the motherboard and we've got a SATA 3 hard drive, and sometimes that can be a problem. So let's see, but it has recognised it, so that's all good. Let's give it a more reasonable date just so it knows that it has booted. So we want it to boot off the CD-ROM and we want it to boot off the writer, which is what it is at the moment. So that's all good. We're going to save that and see if it actually works. So yeah, so Viv didn't come out till 2007, I think, and the graphics card from 2009. So this must have been really late because Windows XP Media Center Edition, well, Windows XP got replaced in 2007 by Vista, didn't it? So this must be after 2007. It must be after 2009. Oh, it's green. Okay, so that is actually a message from the hard drive. The hard drive has been wiped by the e-waste recyclers, and that's a message from the hard drive. So It has not booted from the optical drive, unfortunately. I don't know, the optical drive made a noise, but yeah. So we're not able to boot off that optical drive yet. So it's possible the top optical drive doesn't work. Let's put it in the bottom one, which doesn't want to open. Okay, so it may have stumbled at the first hurdle. The only other possibility is if it's a DVD minus R drive, and I've used a DVD plus R disc. Okay, after a little bit of fiddling, I managed to get the second optical drive open, so let's see if that one's working. So I'm hearing the drive trying to spin up. That sounds, it has worked. Excellent. Now, is it going to recognize that hard drive running in IDE mode? It should do. But let's just make sure. The optical drive is very quiet. For a media center machine, that's excellent. That's exactly what you want. Okay, so we want to run Windows XP setup now, so let's press enter. We want to agree to the license. So we've got a series of unknown disks here. I suspect that's the card readers, but it has recognized the SSD, which is great. So let's go straight into that. It does appear to be working. So it is recognizing the SSD, and the SSD is working. It's the first time I've used this SSD, so it is a bit of an unknown quantity. So we're copying over files. This is going to happen relatively quickly because we're not going to be limited by the SSD. We're going to be limited by how fast that optical drive can extract the data from the surface. It's going pretty quick, but I'm not going to bore you with this. We'll do a jump cut straight to the end. Okay, your installation has, in theory, finished. So we're just going to do the first boot. See if there's any HP customizations for the for this install. So it's standard Windows install by the looks of it. No specific HP customization in that first boot. Okay, and we have our first view of this version of Media Center Edition Windows XP. So it looks pretty normal at this point. It hasn't quite got the screen resolution right, so it may be that it hasn't got the right driver for this card. Let's have a look. Yeah, in fact, even though this is the HP OEM version of this install disk, it's got most of the drivers missing, and that's probably because this is such a late model with that GeForce 210. It's probably just too late for the media that's installed. So we'll find some drivers for all this lot in a moment. Just as find out whether there is a infrared remote inside there somewhere. Let's press the Media Center button, which is the one in the middle. Nothing is happening. So it could be that the infrared receiver is in this list of unknown devices, for example, or a media controller. So it could be that it doesn't yet have the driver for this installed. This is working though, as we can see, because the light is flashing. Okay, let's deal with this first. Okay, let's install Service Pack 3 first before we do anything else, because I think it's very likely that the drivers, for example, for the video card, aren't going to work unless it's Service Pack 3. So let's just do that first. So it's going to take a little while, particularly with a Pentium 4, but we have got an SSD, so things may not be quite that bad. But we'll do a jump cut. And while we're at it, we'll do the unofficial Service Pack 4. So that's got all the post-cessation updates, plus a few other bits and pieces. So let's just do some system info and benchmarking. So the CPU is a Pentium D940, socket 775, we knew all that. Pretty straightforward stuff. We knew the motherboard was an Asus Mon. It's calling itself an Emery 2, although it isn't known as that when I look it up elsewhere. And it's got the 945p chipset in, so that's all good. Got 2 gigs of RAM separated over 2 sticks. Although the SPD doesn't seem to be working in this version of CPU-Z. And then they've got the graphics of GeForce 210, which is over here. We'll come to the date on this another time, but basically this is a very, very low-end graphics card, but from 2009. And so after Windows XP was discontinued and moved to Vista, and it's running at 16 times, but only at PCI Express 1 speeds because of the motherboard. But it's got half a gig memory. It's only got a 64-bit interface, and it was a very slow card at that time. Moving on to the hard disk. So this is the SSD that we plugged in. It's not a particularly fast SSD, and it's running at SATA 1 speeds, but it's just pretty much maxing out the reads, but the writes are pretty compromised. I think that's probably the SSD actually. It's a very budget SSD. Mechanical disk wise, you're probably going to get near 100 megabytes per second from a 320 or 500 gig hard disk that it would have come with. In terms of the read and writes would have been, you know, kind of 3/4 of that probably. But the random access is obviously massively faster on a SSD. On a machine like this though, you probably would be using lots of big, large files. So these numbers are probably more important on this particular machine for this particular application use. So that's interesting. Just put that in there for fun. So I did also do some graphics card benchmarking. 3D Mark 2006 wouldn't run. It would run the first part test, but when it came to the CPU intensive rendering, it took so long to render each frame. You know, it was tens of seconds that it basically just gave up. 2001, 2003, 2005, they all ran, and I did a screenshot of the results. So for 3D Mark 2001, we're running at 15,000 3D marks. For 2003, it drops down by about half to just about 7,000. And then for 2005, not quite halving again, but we're down to 4,700, give or take. So that's the kind of performance you're going to get in old benchmarks on a low-end newer card, which is, I think it's quite interesting. Now, Geekbench 2 does run on this device, and the problem is it goes through the benchmark and it wants to display the results, but it needs a web connection to do that. And so far we haven't got the right drivers for the network card, so I can't show you the Geekbench 2 results. But I thought it was interesting that it ran, and there are some contemporaneous results from machines around at the time. So an AMD Sempron from 2007 was giving it about 1155 at 1.8 gigahertz. We've got a powered PC G4 at 1.2 gigahertz has given a number of 650. And there are some Pentium Ds in here. So there's a Dell Precision Workstation 380 Pentium D running at 3.2 gigs with 2 cores, giving scores of around 2,000. So I'm guessing that's roughly what this would have given, about 2,000 score. And obviously that second core probably would have boosted the score quite reasonably. So what's in store for this system now? Well, it definitely needs a bit of a clean. There are some stains and marks in it, and there's that little bit of rust on the inside which we can clear up. The next thing to do would be to put in a proper mechanical hard drive of the right capacity, say about 320 gigs, 7200 RPM, and also get the proper HP OEM software on there that would have been used to integrate all the things like the tuner, etc. So that's probably the next project. Beyond that, getting one of these hard drives would be great. I started this video by saying HP was being innovative, and it certainly was. However, there is a caveat. These systems were available quite early on in the XP era. So, you know, you're talking about 2003, 2004. I think Windows Media Center Edition, it first came out in 2004 from memory. So in that context, HP were innovating. However, this particular model, it's got that Intel Vive sticker on it, which means it's from at least 2007, and the graphics card wasn't made until 2009. So if that's original OEM, then, you know, by late 2009, 2010, this actually was probably looking a bit ancient, and certainly performance-wise, it would have been very poor with a Pentium dual core in 2010. So maybe HP wasn't quite as innovative as I perhaps led you to believe at the beginning of the video. But I think from the early models, you know, going back to the early Pentium days and the early Windows XP days, I think they were being innovative. But, you know, are they now? I don't think so. I think they've pretty much become very much mainstream. The decision to split into two businesses was an interesting one. And I think that acquisition of Compaq was really the beginning of the end of the kind of really innovative HP. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I thought hopefully you found that interesting. Again, I found it interesting to make and to discover what kind of little features this machine has got. If you use one of these, leave a comment down below. I'd be very interested to hear how people were using their Media Center PCs back in the day. I did actually have one that I did have plugged into my telly in the lounge. It was a home-built one. But hope you found the video interesting. We'll see you in the next one.